Move on now to the other kind of front office star player issue thing that's been going on in the media, and it's Zion's family basically wanting him to leave New Orleans. Now, he's been there for 2 years. He's played 85 games, which is roughly one normal season. Haven't made the playoffs. They just fired Stan Van Gundy, their head coach. But what are your guys' thoughts on this? Do you think Zion's family is right and that he should leave, or this is maybe blown out of proportion? What are your thoughts, Noel?
Yeah, so I guess maybe it could be blown out of proportion in the sense that it doesn't seem like there has been much from the side of just Zion himself, a lot of family speaking for him. However, even at the start of the season before this all kind of came up, there were two moves that made me very skeptical of the Pelicans organization, and that was the Steven Adams move and the Bledsoe move. I think both those players have been good on teams, but I think both of them got a little too much money than I think I would pay them, and both of them didn't really bring much to the team. And in terms of both sides of the ball, I didn't really see anything special out of them. I didn't really understand the moves. I do like how the Pelicans have paired someone like Lonzo with Zion. I think they complement each other's games very much. And obviously Brandon Ingram helps Zion relieve the pressure. So there's definitely stuff there. But if I'm Zion, sure, I don't – unless he really loves New Orleans as a city, I don't think it's out of the question to maybe see if there's other possibilities out there. So those are my initial thoughts.
Yeah, so I have two separate thoughts on this. One is, first, I agree with Noel. I guess I kind of see the Bledsoe move because you were trading Drew Holiday to the Bucks. You were kind of sending him kind of where he wants to go, and you were getting back a player that you thought, could be a solid role player. And Bledsoe is a good defensive player. He's just a very, very poor shooter, which is kind of a problem in the modern NBA. Anybody who's seen the Milwaukee Bucks in the playoffs the last couple of years knows that he's kind of the liability on the court for them offensively. And so, yeah, I kind of get it. But the Steven Adams thing to me was just a little bizarre. I've never been a fan of Steven Adams. I mean, you guys know I'm a big Russell Westbrook fan, and I used to think Steven Adams was the most overrated player in the NBA because to me he wasn't a great rim protector and he wasn't a great offensive player. He just set strong screens and he's a powerful rebounder. But those two things to me do not mean that you make 4 years, $70 million. I think that's his contract. And I think the Portland series, right? Everybody talks about Dame time, FaceTiming Paul George, and Paul George saying it was a bad shot. The biggest problem with that series is Portland plays a very predictable style of basketball. They play Mark Jackson's favorite style, which is just high pick and roll with one of their guards at the top of the key. And they expose Steven Adams because he cannot move on the perimeter and guard the pick and roll at the top of the key. So they put Steven Adams in the mixer, to quote a friend of ours. So, Steven Adams, I didn't understand any of those moves. And honestly, I just felt like Steven Adams was another body clogging the paint with Zion. Like, Zion is unbelievable in the paint. He scores every time. So why wouldn't you want to give him more space to operate and score? Now, in regards to whether he should want out of New Orleans, I understand that his family maybe wants to get him to a bigger city so he becomes more marketable because Zion is probably already one of the 10 most marketable players in the league. Like, I watch plenty of Pelicans games against bad teams just to watch Zion. I'm not going to lie. I was one of those people, and he's really fun to watch. But at the same time, I also feel like it sets a bad precedent at some point if you just leave after 2 years when you're getting drafted by a team. I understand the player's perspective and everything, but I also, part of me looks at it as, the Pelicans have had some missteps. I mean, the third one to me was hiring Stan Van Gundy. He was awful on the Pistons, and hiring him for the Pelicans was just bizarre, especially when I felt that the Pelicans' biggest problem last year was I thought stylistically, offensively, Alvin Gentry worked because they played so fast, and that fit Lonzo Ball and that fit Zion Williamson. Their problem is that nobody on that team plays defense, and Stan Van Gundy didn't get any of them to play defense still. So, not to go off point, but I thought that was another terrible move. But overall, I wish that Zion Williamson would at least re-up with the Pelicans and, be there for 4, 5, 6 years and try and take them to the playoffs, because I still think as presently constructed, even if Brandon Ingram is a little bit of an awkward fit with Zion Williamson, I still think the way Lonzo finished the season, Josh Hart still looks like something to me. Nickeil Alexander-Walker has some potential. Jackson Hayes, not the biggest fan of him, but he, to me, can be better than Steven Adams, and he can jump out of the gym. But when you look at all those pieces that they've accumulated and the assets they have moving forward to make their roster better, yeah, I still think they can be a playoff team and everything. So I understand why his family would want him out for marketability reasons, but I hope he stays. I hope he re-ups after his third year and, plays like 5-6 years in New Orleans at least.
Yeah, I'm kind of somewhere in between with you guys. I understand their roster is really not ideal. Brandon Ingram, great player as your number 2. I think that's completely fine. I like Lonzo too, but I agree with you guys. Some of the surrounding pieces definitely aren't it. And here's my thing though, like, can you as a player come in and in 2 years realistically expect your team to just be constructed perfectly around you? I feel like that's just a big ask. And he didn't even play his first year. I think he played, 30, 40 games, maybe even less. So he's played, I think, around 80 games, and he already wants to leave. I just think it's bad for the NBA if people come in and sign a contract in a small market team specifically and just want to leave. That's the issue that I'm, I guess, seeing. Like, Paul George goes to Oklahoma City. They have him and Russ. This could be a good duo. But after 1 year signing a huge contract, he wants out. Dame just signed a contract in Portland, and now there's stuff that he might not be there. Now, we don't know the truth of it. Nothing's happened. But I just think it's really bad for small market teams if, all these star players just after they feel a little discontented with the roster, they want to leave. And I'd say overall, I'm more like pro player because obviously teams have all the control. Like if you're not performing, they trade you or they cut you or they're pretty ruthless. Like anything can happen at any moment. But when players have all the say and they control everything, that's when I see an issue with it, and particularly for the smaller market teams. Imagine the Bucks. They get Giannis Antetokounmpo, one of the best players in their history. He might be the best ever when it's all said and done. But imagine if he left for, say, a New York or a Lakers or a Clippers or the Mavericks, instead of signing an extension. That would just be bad for the NBA overall. And just the fact that if a player signs a contract and they say, I want to be here, I love the city, they get bounced or the team maybe isn't constructed good enough for them to win, they just want to leave. That's the problem I see. And I think he hasn't finished his rookie contract yet. I know he's a superstar or will be a superstar, but that's a big ask. I mean, look at what LeBron put up with for almost 10 years. He played the player who was best next to him was the Zydrunas Ilgauskas, and that is not ideal if you're there for an extended period of time.
Hey, don't sleep on Larry Hughes.
Larry Hughes, Boobie Gibson, Mo Williams, all those guys, awesome players. But I mean, I think this is crossing a line, and I think there is a line. In 2 years with a player on his rookie contract, I don't think you can just say you want out already, or the family should want him out, I guess.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that kind of divide that you're bringing up, but I think it is kind of an unfortunate situation that the league's taking a turn for, in the sense where you can stay in a small market team, like look at Dame, look at Giannis, and be the man there, but you run the risk of not having as good of a chance to win a championship. And you look at what players like KD do, and obviously there's hate there, but he does put himself in a championship caliber team year in, year out, and it must probably be tough for players like Zion in their position, where they're either stay in their team and hopefully can build it. Obviously, wherever team you get drafted, hopefully you can make them get a championship. That's obviously ideal. But a lot of times you can't compete with these big market teams like the Nets and like the Lakers nowadays. So it's definitely a tough divide. I also just don't like in this situation how Zion's family kind of spoke on behalf of him. I don't really like when that happens with players.
Yeah.
I do think, though, especially with the changes that have just been made, and the amount, I think the Pelicans still have a good amount of picks. Yes, is that?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, a ton of Bucks picks.
They have a ton of picks. They have room to maneuver. I think they have a good enough future to make me think Zion won't leave. But I do think exactly what you were saying, Blake, where it is kind of just annoying having to deal with this divide that is just a reality of the current league.
Yeah, but I agree with both of you, and I wanted to touch on that problem because I'm a small market team fan. I'm a Detroit Pistons fan, and I think the problem with the NBA, and I've ranted on this before, is the media. There's too much pressure on players. Like tomorrow, when KD, like what KD achieved in OKC, some of those years, some of the teams that they went really far with, him and Russ, the things that they did to me are still the best achievements of Kevin Durant's career. Kevin Durant going to Golden State and winning those titles didn't prove anything. And Kevin Durant doing what he's done in Brooklyn to me is just, yeah, he's Kevin Durant. That's what he's always done. Wow, you give him better teammates, he wins a championship. It's crazy to think about it like that, but that level of critical thinking is never applied, and it's always, oh, he didn't win a ring, so he's not great, and that's why these guys leave. And it's frustrating because to me, when a Michael Jordan uplifts, yeah, the Bulls aren't a small market team, but they were an organization that wasn't considered to be the Lakers or Celtics, and he uplifts them for 6 rings. Incredible. I mean, the Cleveland Cavaliers have been a poverty franchise throughout, other besides a couple years with Brad Daugherty in the 90s, and LeBron James still to this day, him winning that title with Cleveland, not just the fact that he beat the 73-9 Warriors, the fact that he won a title with Cleveland, even if it was with Kyrie Irving, who's a very great player, people still regard that as like one of the great achievements in NBA history because he won a title with the Cleveland Cavaliers. If Kevin Durant had won a title with the Oklahoma City Thunder, which they were very close his final year, obviously they blew the 3-1 lead. And if you remember the year they did go to the finals with him, Russ, and James Harden, in game 2, LeBron fouled Kevin Durant at the end of that game. They didn't call it. And if they call it, the Thunder go up 2-0 going back to Miami a year after LeBron just choked in 2011, who knows what could have happened in that series. So, and if he had won in OKC, are you kidding me? Like Isaiah Thomas uplifting the Pistons and the bad boy Pistons being able to win with the Pistons, to me, that's a big deal. Like even a guy like Reggie Miller, he's so respected because he kept going to the Eastern Conference Finals at the end of the day with the Indiana Pacers. And so, I personally respect Dame a ton. Yeah, Portland's a pretty good organization. They had some good teams actually before Dame as well. But the fact that Dame has made them this perennial playoff contender in the Western Conference and they can go as far as the Western Conference Finals, to me, is extremely impressive, regardless of whether he wins a championship. And I certainly think Damian Lillard could win a championship if you gave him better coaching and a better support system. I have no doubt about that. But to say that because he didn't win it, he's somehow a less player makes no sense to me. And I think James Harden is the best example of this, right? So if the Nets win the ring, which I personally think they will win it, James Harden will all of a sudden go from a guy that people regard as a top 30, top 25 player in NBA history to top 20, just because he has a ring. But what did this year in Brooklyn prove? That the 7 years with the Rockets, when he was historically great, when he was having 32 straight 30-point games and winning 20 of those games with Austin Rivers and Kenneth Faried, 2 guys who they basically got because they were cut and nobody wanted them. They picked up off the waiver wire a couple days before, and James Harden played extended time period of games with those 2 guys starting and won 20 games. To me, that's way more impressive. And so it just goes back to, I think both of you are exactly right. The problem is the fact that there's too much pressure on these guys when they go to small markets, especially when you're a Zion Williamson, a generational talent, to just turn everything around. And a place like New Orleans has never had a good organization. Chris Paul never was given everything he deserved. Anthony Davis was never given anything he deserved. And now Zion possibly won't get everything he deserves. But at the same time, I think that all of that stems from the way the game is covered. And until that changes, until the NBA media stops being toxic, I can never blame a player for wanting out of the small market, even though as a Pistons fan, I want players to just stay there and see if they can uplift that environment. And even if they can't, I don't think it changes how great they are.
Interesting. And I think you can even see this on TNT. Shaq obviously won, 3 or 4 rings, and Charles Barkley, who MVP, unfortunately ran into the widely considered GOAT and one of the greatest teams ever, those Bulls teams, and Shaq basically always makes fun of him because he doesn't have rings. Now, if Charles Barkley were to team up with, say, someone of that era who was a similar caliber player, I have no doubts in my mind that they would have been able to win. I mean, Charles Barkley was an MVP caliber player again, so he was obviously incredible. I think the media really just making fun of people that don't have rings or, viewing them as a lesser player is kind of one of the reasons people like Zion or others like want him to leave or want someone from a smaller market to leave for that opportunity. But I still just think it's bad for the league overall that this is happening. And what is Adam Silver going to possibly do? Like force a player to not be mad at how their roster is constructed? You can't really do anything about it. So I think the media presence plays a huge part in how players' legacies are seen and things about those nature. But any more thoughts, Noel?
Not too much. I think it's just what Vish was saying. I really agree with the media and how much they put emphasis on winning championships and rings. But then it comes down to the fact winning at what cost, where I think I just love players like Giannis or like Dame who just stay with the same organization. I think it's better for the league. And you can't blame, obviously, KD or these guys who make super teams like LeBron because the media, if they don't do this, the media just going to keep saying they don't have rings. So I can see both ways. But I hope Zion stays in New Orleans. I think it makes the entire league better. And obviously the super teams are a reality we're all facing with the current league. But I just love how much talent is in the league now. And I hope that it keeps up at a level of competitiveness where any team really can win. Where I think this playoff series, obviously the Nets at full strength are kind of the team to beat now. But with their injuries, it kind of has made an atmosphere where it's kind of up for grabs. And that's awesome. This playoffs has been awesome. So those are kind of my final thoughts on the matter.
Definitely. So, yeah, in this long-winded discussion, I guess, Zion out of New Orleans. His family wants him out of New Orleans. Let's just get that clarified. I think it's a little rich at this point in his career, but I guess we can all see like why you'd want out of a smaller market that has – I think they have the worst jerseys in the league, and they're just not whatsoever. Their color scheme's terrible. It's horrible. Who likes those colors?
Hey, real quick before we go, because I feel like you touched on this point, and I think it should be reiterated. Excuse me. Is that we don't know if Zion wants out, right? Like Zion could love New Orleans and all of this thing. It's just some people in his family, and this became news and everything. So it's some people in his family. You reiterated that a few times. I just wanted to mention it once more.